What happens when the man who owns the whole company shows up to deliver pizzas, and no one knows it's him? Nathaniel Logan sat in his office, staring at a thick stack of customer complaints. He had inherited the pizza chain from his father 3 years ago, and while business was still strong, something felt off lately. Complaints about late deliveries, rude service, and sloppy food were stacking up higher than ever. Nathaniel had tried calling store managers, but each time he got the same answers. "We're short-staffed," or "It's just a rough week." He wasn't buying it. 8 stores made up the district he owned outright. Too small for corporate to notice every slip-up, but big enough to turn heads if things got bad. Nathaniel decided it was time to see for himself what was really happening. He had never met most of the store employees in person, they only knew him as a name on the paycheck. He hired a professional makeup artist to help him look different, scruffier beard, glasses, a slight stomach padding under his shirt. He chose the name Nick. He even drove an old beat-up sedan instead of his usual black truck. Nathaniel picked the 3rd store on his list. It was in a busy suburb, and complaints about late deliveries were the worst there. He walked in just before the dinner rush, wearing a faded hoodie and jeans. The manager, a short guy with slicked back hair and a clipboard, barely glanced at him. "You the new driver?" "Yeah, Nick," Nathaniel said, offering a small nod. "Whatever, get a car topper from the back and don't be late. If you are, you're paying for it," the manager snapped without even introducing himself. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. He figured blending in was more important than speaking up. The place was chaos. Phones ringing off the hook, employees rushing around, and one poor girl at the counter trying to keep up with a line of customers stretching out the door. A young woman wearing a battered cap handed him his first order. "Good luck," she whispered under her breath. Nathaniel chuckled softly and headed out. The first 2 deliveries went okay, nothing crazy. The 3rd one took a little longer thanks to a wrong turn, and by the time he got back, the manager was waiting for him by the door, arms crossed. "You late, Nick?" The manager barked loud enough for a few customers to turn their heads. Traffic was heavy. "Took a wrong street," Nathaniel said calmly. The manager's face reddened. "Traffic, huh? You think customers care about your little problems? You're docked $5 from your tips." Nathaniel blinked. "Wait, what? You heard me. House policy, you late, you pay, you don't like it, walk." Nathaniel clenched his jaw. He wanted to blow his cover right there, but he bit it back and nodded. "Got it." As he went to grab his next delivery, a nervous-looking kid, maybe 18 or 19, brushed past him. "Don't be late again, Victor," the manager hissed at the kid. "Or you're going to be working here for free." Victor didn't say anything, just ducked his head and hurried out the door. Nathaniel frowned. Something felt really wrong. He spent the next few hours running pizzas all over town, watching the same pattern over and over. Any driver who came back even a minute late got chewed out. Some lost tips. Some got threats. One girl came back nearly in tears after getting stuck behind an accident, and the manager just laughed in her face. At one point, Nathaniel overheard the manager bragging to the shift lead about how much money he saved by punishing the lazy drivers. By the end of the night, Nathaniel's hands were shaking not from exhaustion, but from anger. He pulled Victor aside before leaving. "Hey man," Nathaniel said quietly, "is it always like this?" Victor hesitated, glancing around. "Yeah, pretty much. If you're late, even if it's not your fault, you get docked. Some people quit after a week. I'm just trying to save up for community college." Nathaniel nodded slowly. "Thanks for telling me." He knew what he had to do. But first, he needed to gather a little more. Tomorrow, he'd be back, and this time, he wasn't just here to deliver pizzas. Nathaniel arrived the next day just before the afternoon rush, slipping into the store without anyone noticing. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the air smelled faintly of burnt cheese. A different shift lead was at the counter this time, a tall woman with tired eyes and a sharp voice barking orders to the kitchen. The manager from yesterday, the one barking threats about docking pay, was slouched in a booth, scrolling through his phone with a half-eaten sandwich in front of him. He barely glanced up when Nathaniel clocked in. "You're lucky we need bodies today, Nick," he called lazily. "Otherwise I wouldn't bother." Nathaniel ignored him and grabbed a delivery bag. As he waited for the next order, a short, wiry man with graying hair carrying 2 heavy trays bumped into him near the oven. "Watch it, newbie," he snapped. "Sorry," Nathaniel muttered, stepping aside. The man wore a faded black apron that looked like it hadn't seen a washing machine in weeks. His name tag read Joel, and his hands shook slightly as he loaded pizzas into boxes. "You need help carrying those," Nathaniel offered. Joel narrowed his eyes. "Just stay out of my way. You drivers get paid to sit in your cars. The rest of us do the real work." Nathaniel decided not to press it. He could already tell tensions here were a constant undercurrent, ready to boil over at anything. The first few deliveries were manageable, but when he returned after his 4th run, things inside the store had deteriorated. The phones rang endlessly, orders piled up on the counter, and customers waiting for pickups started getting restless. The shift lead tried to manage it all, shouting over the noise, but it was clear they were critically short on hands. Victor stumbled through the door carrying 2 pizzas, his face flushed. The manager caught sight of him and pointed aggressively. "Where the hell you been?" he demanded. "There was a train crossing. I couldn't move," Victor said, panting. "Excuses," the manager snapped. "You cost us a refund earlier. That's coming out of your tips." Nathaniel felt his fists clench at his sides. He wasn't here to blow his cover yet, but every second made it harder. A woman in her mid-30s, wearing a baggy sweatshirt with the company logo, rushed in from the kitchen carrying a small first aid kit. Her forehead was bleeding lightly. "What happened?" Nathaniel asked her under his breath as she passed, slipped on the mop water. "Manager said to walk it off," she whispered before ducking into the bathroom. Nathaniel's stomach twisted. Negligence, intimidation, exploitation. The list was growing longer by the hour. Later in the shift, when things finally slowed enough for a moment's breath, Nathaniel caught Victor at the drink cooler, filling a cup of water. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Victor nodded, but his hands trembled around the cup. "I don't get it, man," Victor said, voice cracking a little. "I work hard, I come in when they call me, and it's still not enough. They treat us like garbage." Nathaniel leaned against the cooler, keeping his voice low. "Why stay?" Victor shrugged. "I need this job. My mom's sick. I'm helping with bills. No one else is hiring right now." Nathaniel understood. He had grown up watching his own dad work 2 jobs to keep their family afloat before the pizza business took off. He knew desperation when he saw it. Before he could reply, Joel stormed past, bumping Victor hard enough to splash water onto the floor. "Clean that up," Joel barked without slowing down. Victor scrambled for a rag while Nathaniel stood frozen for a second, fury building in his chest. The final straw came a few hours later. A woman with dark skin and a warm smile came through the door, wearing the delivery uniform. She looked around, hesitating. The manager glanced up from his phone, sneered, and said, "Oh great. Another charity case. Hope you can drive faster than the last one." The woman's face fell. Nathaniel stepped closer to her. "I'm Nick," he said gently. "First day," she nodded. "Yeah." "Name's Darlene." "Don't let him get to you," Nathaniel said under his breath. "You'll be fine." The manager clapped his hands sarcastically. "Chop chop, Darlene. Maybe if you hustle, you'll actually make it a week." Nathaniel's jaw tightened so hard he thought he might crack a tooth. As Darlene headed to the back to get her delivery bags, Nathaniel made his decision. He pulled off the ball cap he had been wearing, running a hand through his hair. He walked straight up to the manager's booth, standing directly in his line of sight. "You," Nathaniel said, voice cold. The manager glanced up lazily. "What now, Nick?" Nathaniel reached into his pocket and pulled out his company ID, the one with his real name and photo on it. The manager's eyes widened. His phone slipped from his hand and clattered onto the table. "You're fired," Nathaniel said clearly, loud enough for everyone in the store to hear. The room fell silent. "You can't," the manager started. "I can," Nathaniel interrupted, "and I just did." The manager stumbled to his feet, face turning purple. "You set me up." Nathaniel didn't move an inch. "No, you set yourself up. I gave you every chance to run a fair store. You chose to exploit your staff, dock their pay illegally, ignore injuries, and insult new hires. Get your stuff and leave. Now." The manager looked around like he might argue, but every employee was staring at him, some with barely concealed smirks, others with pure relief. Finally, he grabbed his jacket and stormed out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. Nathaniel turned to the rest of the team. "I'm Nathaniel Logan," he said, voice firm but steady. "I own this district. I've been undercover for the past 2 days to see what's really happening, and what I saw here is unacceptable." No one said a word. Victor stood frozen, water cup forgotten in his hand. Nathaniel continued, softer now. "You've all been doing your best under terrible leadership. That changes today." He looked around, meeting each pair of eyes. "I'm bringing in a temporary manager until we can find someone permanent, someone who actually believes in respect and fairness. Until then, I want to hear what you need to make this place better. Breaks, overtime pay, safety equipment, you name it." Darlene came out from the back, confusion on her face. Nathaniel smiled at her. "You're safe here, all of you are." One by one, the employees relaxed. Some even smiled. Victor wiped his eyes quickly with the back of his hand. Nathaniel knew this was just the beginning. There were still policies to fix, trust to rebuild, and good people to promote. But for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. Right there in the trenches, standing beside the people who made his company possible. The store was still buzzing after the abrupt firing. Nathaniel knew he had to act quickly to keep the momentum going. He couldn't let uncertainty fester, not after what everyone had endured. He pulled a chair into the center of the room, motioning for the employees to gather around. Some lingered near the ovens, others leaned against the counter, tentative but listening. "We're not closing tonight," Nathaniel said, "but we'll run a simplified menu to ease the pressure. No specialty orders until further notice. Only basic pizzas, wings, and drinks. That way you're not scrambling." A few heads nodded. No one spoke yet, but the tension in the room softened slightly. "I'll be working with you the rest of the night," Nathaniel added. "I'm not here to watch from the sidelines. I'll take deliveries, clean whatever's needed." The shift lead, who Nathaniel now knew was named Tanya, stepped forward, arms crossed tightly against her chest. "What about the register?" Tanya asked. "Only managers have the codes." Nathaniel pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then handed it to her. "I just reset the system. You're authorized now. Full access." Tanya's eyebrows lifted slightly, but she accepted the phone without a word. Victor glanced at Nathaniel, voice low. "What about the schedule? We're all pulling doubles." Nathaniel nodded. "Starting tomorrow, we're bringing in relief drivers and kitchen support from nearby stores. Tonight, we keep it simple and survive. Tomorrow, we rebuild." He saw the impact of his words hit the slight straightening of tired shoulders, the way exhausted faces looked a little less beaten down. Nathaniel checked the order screen. A modest queue had built up. He grabbed a delivery bag and turned to Victor. "Ride with me," Nathaniel said. "Let's knock out a few together." Victor hesitated, then nodded. As they headed for the door, Darlene was sorting orders at the counter. Her hands moved fast, efficient despite being new. "You're doing great," Nathaniel told her as he passed. She gave a small, grateful smile, her earlier hesitation gone. Outside, the air was crisp. Nathaniel unlocked his beat-up sedan and Victor climbed in, balancing the pizzas carefully on his lap. As they drove, Nathaniel kept it casual. "How long you been working here?" he asked. 6 months, Victor said quietly. "Started part-time, then they kept giving me more hours. You like delivering?" Victor shrugged. "I don't mind it, just kinda felt like no matter how hard I worked, it wasn't enough." They pulled into a cul-de-sac, Nathaniel parking under a streetlight. Victor hopped out and ran the pizza to the door. Nathaniel watched from the car as Victor smiled politely at the customer, handed over the order and jogged back. As Victor climbed in, he exhaled heavily. "Sometimes I think about quitting," he admitted, "but my mom's chemo bills." "There's no backup plan." Nathaniel gripped the steering wheel tighter for a moment. "You shouldn't have to choose between being treated with respect and making a living," Nathaniel said. Victor looked out the window, saying nothing. They finished 2 more deliveries before heading back. The store was holding steady. Tanya had taken charge, organizing the kitchen with brisk authority. Darlene and another driver, a lanky college kid named Lewis, moved in and out efficiently. Nathaniel noticed Joel hunched over the prep table, mumbling to himself as he slapped toppings onto pizzas. Nathaniel approached him. "Joel," he said evenly. Joel didn't look up. "Busy." Nathaniel stood his ground. "We're all busy, but starting now, there's no room here for hostility. If you can't treat your teammates with respect, you can leave." Joel's hands froze. Slowly, he turned. "You serious?" Joel said, voice low and incredulous. "Dead serious," Nathaniel replied. "You want to stay, fine, but you work as part of the team, no insults, no bullying." Joel stared at him for a long moment, then gave a curt nod and turned back to his work. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The night dragged on, a steady pulse of orders and deliveries. Nathaniel ran pizzas, mopped spills, and even manned the phones when Tanya needed a break. At one point, he caught Darlene carefully bandaging a burn on her wrist. "You okay?" Nathaniel asked. "Yeah." "Oven caught me," she said lightly. Nathaniel frowned. "Did anyone train you on the safe zones for loading and unloading?" Darlene shook her head. "Not really, they just threw me in." Nathaniel made a mental note. Tomorrow, proper training modules would be mandatory, no more sink or swim. Near closing time, Tanya gathered everyone near the ovens. "We're low on dough balls," she announced. "Won't have enough for morning if we don't prep." Nathaniel looked around. Everyone looked drained. "I'll stay and prep," he said. "You all finish cleaning and head out once done." Tanya opened her mouth to protest, but Nathaniel cut her off with a look. She gave a tired chuckle instead. "Boss's orders, huh? Exactly," Nathaniel said, smiling faintly. By midnight, the store gleamed. Counters wiped down, floors mopped, ovens scrubbed. Nathaniel sent Victor, Darlene, Lewis, and Tanya home with promises of paid overtime for the night. He stayed behind, working side by side with Joel in silence to prep dough, sauce, and toppings for the next day. Halfway through, Joel spoke without looking up. "You're different than the last guy." Nathaniel didn't respond immediately. He finished rolling out a dough ball before answering. "That's the idea," he said simply. Joel grunted, and they worked the rest of the shift without another word. At nearly 2 in the morning, Nathaniel locked up, stepping into the quiet night. His arms ached, his back twinged, and he was bone-tired. But for the first time in a long time, he felt connected again, not just to the business, but to the people who kept it alive. Tomorrow, he would meet with the regional director to start interviewing new management candidates. He would schedule mandatory training sessions, implement a zero-tolerance harassment policy, and set up an anonymous employee feedback system. No more blind trust in middle management. No more assuming things were fine because the numbers looked good. The people mattered more than the profits. Always had. Always would. Nathaniel climbed into his old sedan and sat for a moment watching the dark street. He didn't feel like a CEO tonight. He felt like a man who had almost lost his way and found it again just in time. The next morning, Nathaniel arrived early, slipping into the store through the back entrance while the city was still waking up. The air inside was cool and still. Pans clattered softly in the kitchen where Tanya was prepping for the day, her hair tied up neatly under a clean cap. She looked up, startled for a moment before remembering the night before. "Morning," she said, her voice hoarse but steady. "Morning," Nathaniel replied, pulling on an apron. "We've got a lot to get done." He had spent hours on the phone after closing, arranging temporary staff from nearby stores, coordinating training sessions, and scheduling interviews for a permanent manager. Relief drivers and kitchen workers would trickle in over the next few days, but for today, the team would have to hold steady with who they had. As the first few employees trickled into the store, Nathaniel gathered them around the counter. "We're starting fresh," he said. "But I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm asking you to help build something better." Darlene stood near the back, her arms folded tightly across her chest. Victor hung just behind her, his expression guarded. Nathaniel continued, keeping his voice even. "I've arranged for 2 additional drivers from another location to help cover lunch and dinner. Starting next week, we'll have a full training schedule for everyone who wants it. Safety, customer service, everything. And overtime pay is official, no games." Lewis, the college kid who had been working late the night before, raised his hand slightly. "What about, like promotions?" he asked. "Is that going to be a thing, or are we just stuck at the bottom?" Nathaniel nodded. "There are going to be clear pathways for advancement. Shift leads, assistant managers. Based on merit, not favoritism. If you want to move up, you'll have the chance." Lewis's shoulders relaxed a fraction. Darlene's eyes flickered with something cautious but hopeful. Nathaniel looked around the room. "I'll be checking in personally every week for the next 3 months. If something's wrong, I want to hear it from you directly." He didn't need to say more. The message was clear. No more middlemen hiding the truth. The morning rush hit fast. Phones rang steadily and online orders flowed in. Nathaniel took deliveries alongside Victor and Darlene, while Tanya managed the kitchen with a quiet efficiency that kept things moving without chaos. Mid-morning, 2 temporary drivers arrived. Both were older, seasoned workers from a neighboring store. Nathaniel introduced them quickly and got them folding boxes and prepping their first runs. Joel worked the prep station in silence, keeping to himself but moving briskly. Nathaniel kept an eye on him, ready to step in if he slipped back into old habits, but Joel stayed focused, saying little and working clean. By noon, the store was running better than it had in months. Not perfect, but functional. Orders went out on time, customers left smiling, and the team moved with a rough rhythm that, while unpolished, showed promise. Nathaniel spent the slower moments speaking one-on-one with each employee between runs. When he pulled Darlene aside near the soda machine, she wiped her hands nervously on her apron. "I know you're new," Nathaniel said, "but you handled last night like a pro." She gave a small, uncertain laugh. "I was just trying not to mess up," she said. "You didn't," Nathaniel said firmly. "You showed up, you stayed calm, that's more than most." Darlene hesitated, then said, "I almost didn't come back today. I thought maybe it was just talk, that things wouldn't really change." Nathaniel met her eyes. "They're changing," he said. "And you're part of why." For the first time, she smiled fully, no hesitation. Later, Nathaniel caught up with Victor in the parking lot between deliveries. Victor leaned against a battered delivery car, sipping from a water bottle. "How's it feel today?" Nathaniel asked. Victor shrugged, but there was less weight in the gesture than before. "Different," he said. "Better." Nathaniel leaned against the car beside him. "I meant what I said about advancement," Nathaniel said. "You've got potential. If you want to move up, I'll back you." Victor looked at him carefully. "Even if I don't have a degree?" he asked. "Especially if you don't," Nathaniel said. "Hard work matters more." Victor nodded slowly, processing that. Inside, Tanya had finished organizing the new stock delivery that had come mid-morning. She caught Nathaniel near the ovens. "You're serious about the training, right?" she asked. "Because we've been promised stuff before, never happened." "I'm serious," Nathaniel said. "First session's scheduled for Tuesday. Mandatory, paid." Tanya studied him for a moment, then gave a short nod. "If you're sticking around to see it through," she said, "count me in." The afternoon passed in a steady rhythm. No yelling, no threats. Just work hard, messy, imperfect, but honest. Mid-afternoon, Nathaniel sat down with Lewis near the break table, sharing slices of leftover pizza. "You're in college, right?" Nathaniel asked. "Yeah," Lewis said. "Business major, part-time here to pay for books." Nathaniel smiled faintly. "Well," he said, "consider this your crash course in management. If you're interested, I'll put you on the list for shift lead training." Lewis's eyes widened. "Seriously?" "100%, Nathaniel said. "You've got good instincts. Just need to sharpen them." Lewis beamed, a rare flash of genuine excitement. As the sun started to set, Nathaniel gathered everyone briefly near the counter. "You earned tonight," he said. "We're closing an hour early. Everyone's getting paid for the full shift." There were surprised glances, a few smiles. Tanya crossed her arms, but this time it was more thoughtful than defensive. "Tomorrow's another step," Nathaniel said. "But tonight you can breathe." Cleanup was fast and efficient. Nathaniel helped mop and stack chairs, feeling the bone-deep fatigue settling into his muscles again. But it was a good tired, the kind that comes from honest work. Before locking up, he called a quick meeting outside in the parking lot, under the glow of the flickering streetlights. "I'm proud of what you did today," Nathaniel said. "It's not easy to bounce back after what you've been through, but you did it." Victor shifted on his feet, looking down but smiling slightly. Darlene tucked her hands into her jacket pockets, the tension finally easing from her frame. Lewis stood tall, energized by the possibilities ahead. Tanya gave a small, approving nod, the kind that meant more than words. Nathaniel looked around at them and felt a sharp, fierce gratitude. "We're building something better," he said, voice steady. "And it's going to be because of people like you." He handed out small envelopes to each of them, thank you bonuses, not huge but enough to matter, enough to show he saw them. As they drifted off to their cars, Nathaniel stayed behind a moment longer, watching. This wasn't just about fixing a broken store. It was about keeping a promise to himself, to his father's legacy, and above all, to the people who had trusted him, even when they had every reason not to. Nathaniel slipped his keys into his pocket, the cool night air brushing against his skin as he turned toward his car. Tomorrow would come with its own battles. But tonight, the foundation was set. And this time, it was built the right way.